Hey there, folks, it's Astrid. Do you ever feel like you're the odd one out? Like the world is out to get you? Well, you're not alone. So join me as we take a look at embracing anathema on today's episode of Sympathetic Vibrations. I've been silent about a lot of stuff on the channel here, mainly because I don't want to rouse a bunch of, feel sorry for me, negative attention stuff, whatever. As you may guess, I'm a member of several somewhat marginalized groups, but it goes deeper than that. I recently lost what I had originally thought was my dream job due to office drama, basically. Um, and I'm trying my best to move on from that and being semi-employed, as in about 4 or 5 hours a week running sound, getting by on unemployment at this point. But it's very tight because I wasn't making a lot before they cut it to 2/3. But that aside, obviously I'm trans. I'm Christian. If any of you read the tags, trans Christian musician, that's kind of the thing, right? But just so you know where I'm coming from, it's a tough situation to be in, and it's very easy to feel discouraged and alone and afraid and despondent. And I've been in therapy. I'm going to be admitting a bunch of stuff that you're not supposed to admit in society today, so you can just deal with it. But by the way, you will notice that I have decided to go back to a video format for this episode in particular. I think for reasons that I hope will become clear later in the episode that that's important this time around. I'm not ditching the other format necessarily, but we're trying something sort of new, sort of recycled this time around. I first want to address my recent video content. Yes, I've been putting out a lot of live acoustic stuff, either recorded here in the place of residence or recorded at Vinny's, where I've started doing open mic nights, which has been very productive for me and very encouraging. And some of you may enjoy that. Some of you may think, okay, that's kind of lazy content. And you're right on both counts. I am kind of intentionally keeping my time aside, as well as taking my mental health seriously, but also working on the album that is going to be coming out in mid 2025, which is called The Devil You Just Met, which is a title I've had kind of banging around my head for a while, and recently has just kind of come to the forefront as being applicable. So you guys can look forward to that. I look forward to showing it to you. I do have some tracks up for that already up on my SoundCloud if y'all want to take a listen. And of course, you've heard a few here on the channel in acoustic form at least. Anyway, getting back to the topic. We're coming up on Christmas here, and just so I can wrap in all my loose ends, we're going to tie this in with the Christmas story a little bit. It's easy for us to forget in this season, in this world that we're in now, where Christianity is just kind of so much of a given that we've come to call it a post-Christian culture, how counterculture Christianity, and Christ in particular, actually was. You think about the story that we all know this time of year, or most of us know, and first of all, I'm not trying to say this story is true or not true. I'm not trying to tell you what to believe. You believe what you want to believe, but stories are there to be taken lessons from, if anything. And I think it'd be a mistake not to take something away from this one. So in this story, we've got the seed of a family, basically. We've got Mary and Joseph, who are two not well-to-do Jewish folks that are in love, that are about to get married. They're in a state called betrothal, which in biblical context is somewhere between marriage and engagement. More like an engagement in that you're not supposed to be, having fun. And more like a marriage in that to break it off, you really need to kind of have a divorce, basically. And, one thing and another, Mary shows up pregnant. Now she knows, and eventually Joseph knows, that the pregnancy is not due to indiscretion, not due to infidelity. It's due to the Holy Spirit giving her a child. which is not an easy position to be putting any young woman in any culture, let alone in that one where the prescribed punishment for adultery was being stoned to death for both parties. So Mary was kind of in a predicament, obviously. Joseph was in a predicament. Does he, his original thought, of course, was, she's been sleeping around. And so his original thought, he's faced with a choice basically to do what the law says and put her to death, or to do a merciful thing and put her away quietly. Either way, he's not going to be with the woman that he loves, and he feels this religious, spiritual pressure to do so. And then he's told, hey, don't worry about it. This child is from God. It's a very difficult place for both of them to be in. They're in a small town. News gets around. They are not well to do. Joseph is a guy that works with his hands and, sells what he's made with his hands. And, if the townsfolk decide not to patronize his business, they're kind of out in the streets and hungry with, a little mouth to feed. So it's a very hard position to be put in. And, there's a whole argument to be made about why did God put them in that position to begin with, but we're not going there today. Anyways, what I wanted to point out is that these folks, they have a lot more in common with us outcasts than we like to think sometimes. So in that context, I want to explore a little bit. There's a song I wrote recently called Worth, which is primarily about, not defining yourself by what you do, not taking your worth out of your net worth is the catchphrase in that song. But there's a line in the first verse that says, if it helps, I'll gladly be your iconoclast, which is somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but also sincere. I'm coming from a place where I know that at times I'm going to be the center of attention in the worst possible way. I know that I am going to invite ridicule and at times hatred. And you know what? I'm going to stand strong anyway. Because really, that's the way that we win. Not fighting back against people, certainly, but standing strong and not caving into the pressure, whatever that means. I'm sure a lot in my community, particularly with the Trump presidency, are tempted to, I've got friends that literally are, making plans to move out of country at this point because of it. And, certainly there are people that, have plans to move out of red states because they could be potentially in danger. So not to marginalize that at all. I realize here in California, I have it good as far as the U.S. stage or even the world stage is concerned. I don't think we're going to be in a place in this state where our rights are violated, where our lives are in danger. But, certainly it's within the realm of possibility, but I don't, with the culture being what it is here, I don't see things going that way. However, I think it's all that much more important for us to set a good example. And, I see a lot of bad examples being set these days, and not to, call anybody out or shame anybody, but, because there are people genuinely making fear responses that are, grounded in good sense. And, I'm certainly not going to come down on anybody for doing that. But trans folks, LGBT folks in general are, still marginalized and potentially even more so under the new administration. And that's not to come down on Republicans. That's not to come down on Trump supporters. My landlady, I don't know if I've told anybody this on the channel, but my landlady is a Trump supporter. And she has been my biggest fan, basically. She has been so great. She's been so supportive. I was dreading coming out to her because, she was a Trump supporter and there's so much rhetoric on that side of the curtain. Not to get political, I'm very, very moderate myself. But I was genuinely scared when I was coming out to folks because potentially I could be without a roof over my head and nowhere else to go. So it was not a choice I made lightly, nor was it a discussion that was easy for me to have. None of the discussions around coming out have been particularly easy for me. I'm not a person who handles intense situations like that easily, and my brain being what it is, I tend to, look at the worst possible outcome and expect that. And, that's something I'm working on because I know it's not a healthy attitude, but it's where I've been and to an extent where I'm at. And of course, with this new unemployment situation, with the, issues with my mental health, and don't worry, I'm not going crazy. I'm not, suicidal or anything like that. But I have been depressed and anxious, and rightly so. And I've been struggling to make sense of a life that in many ways has fallen out from under me. So it's taking every ounce of strength I have at this point to talk to the camera and to admit those things, because there's a part of me that just doesn't want to show those things to anybody, that doesn't want to be that person, to draw that kind of attention to myself. And I realize that this is something of a problem with Western society, is that we don't talk about these things. We do the stiff upper lip. We pretend everything's okay. We act like we have everything under control, even when we don't. So, coming from various marginalized groups, and I would actually count Christianity, and particularly my particular brand of Christianity, which, believe it or not, I'm a fundamentalist. At least in terms of believing that the Bible is, accurate in what it describes. And yes, that means I'm a six-day creationist. There's a lot of scientific evidence that can be read however your internal bias wants you to read it, so I'm not going to argue those points at this point. But that's where I'm at. And, not that I'm apt to suffer any persecution because of that. Not that I'm, my life's going to be in danger, but there's certainly been ridicule, and there's certainly been dismissal, particularly by the atheist norm, which, I'll go out on a limb and say that, this country is, their normative form is an atheist, a person that does not believe, that, thinks that Christianity has nothing to offer in this day and age. And again, I'm not here to argue that. Some of my best friends are, oh gosh, I'm doing that. I'm saying some of my best friends are atheists, but it is true. I think, I've been blessed to come to the point where we can get past that and just celebrate what we have in common and not what we have different, and maybe learn a thing or two from each other. You never know. Anyways, I think with the trans community these days, we're seeing a lot of fear. We're seeing a lot of reactionary responses. And as I said before, I'm not coming down on anybody for responding this way. It's certainly a valid response. But I think one of the things that the world needs to see right now is for us to stay the course in steadfast dignity, to bear whatever comes our way with poise, without faltering, to hold our heads up high, and not to, sink to the level of those that would slander us. It's so tempting to just spit vitriol at this point. Blame all those evil people that, have those beliefs, or, get behind that political system. It's the game of divide and conquer, and I've talked about it on this channel before, talked about it on my other channel before, for that matter. By the way, if y'all are interested in checking out my pre-transition work, I do have links to the Backwater J channel, which has stuff pre-2023 or so. I'm not embarrassed by that stuff, but it's certainly not who I am now. Tangent aside, be the better person is what I'm saying. Great reforms in the past, particularly in the 20th century, have been wrought by public nonviolent solidarity. I think of the civil rights movement under Martin Luther King Jr. I think of Indian independence and equal rights under Gandhi. I think even back to the new covenant under Jesus Christ, despite Hebrew and Roman oppression. Going back to our Christmas story, Christ never stepped outside that iconoclast role, that anathema role in his lifetime. He was there to challenge the authorities that be, and he didn't pull his punches. He was talking to the political and religious leaders of the time, the people that literally, as we see later, had the power to put him to death, when he called them hypocrites and a den of vipers and stuff. Now, den of vipers might have been John the Baptist. Anyways, different guy, great guy, but we're not talking about him right now. Jesus, to pull out a bit of a cliche, he told it like it was. And it's the reason, I think, that his words have stood the test of time. It's the reason that Christianity has risen to the point that it has. And not that I agree with everything Christianity has done in the past, far from it, or at least what people have done in the name of Christ that I'm convinced was not done by actual Christians, but by politicians with their own agendas. But I digress. We need violence to stop with us, if it ever is to stop at all. We need the world to see that we stand together, unafraid, unapologetically, that we're people of dignity, worthy of respect and representation, that we will not stand down, even if you slaughter us to the last person. There is a guy named Tertullian, who is a 2nd century Christian writer and a father of the church. Those of you that are Christians probably know whereof I speak, but one of the things he's famous for saying is that the blood of martyrs is the seed of the church. Meaning that when people are killed for something, when people stand fast to that in the face of death, other people take notice. So many times throughout history, people in power have tried to squash a movement or squash a minority or, what have you, and ended up empowering it through their oppression because the oppressed faced it unafraid, as I said, with dignity, with poise, with nonviolence, that the oppressed minorities were the better person. And certainly not that that's always the case, but more often than not, we see these truly blessed anecdotes and stories of, people and cultures that are changed by this sort of thing for the better. And I am optimistic that that sort of change can happen in this culture at this moment. But it needs to start with us. There is no bucking that responsibility for me or anybody else. And, I'm not the type of person that likes to be out in public speaking about stuff. That's why I hide behind a camera and, the anonymity of the internet and whatever. Is because, just being around people in a non-confrontational situation stresses me out. I suspect I'm a bit on the autistic spectrum in that I tend to get overwhelmed, particularly by audio stimuli a lot, which I know is fairly ironic as a rock musician, but there it is. At church, we have a coffee hour afterwards, and I literally have to step out of the room because it's just an echo chamber with everybody trying to talk louder than everybody else, and most of them being hard of hearing. And so, for somebody with sensitive ears like me, you can imagine that, it gets very stressful very quickly. So that's where I'm at. I'm not saying that you need to get out on the streets and campaign. I'm not saying that you need to, call all your friends and relatives and associates and let them know exactly where you are at. But I think we all, if we look at our lives, if we look at our situations, we know the areas that we can stand and make a difference. That's why I'm facing the camera right now. Much as I'd like to hide behind that cute Sympathetic Vibrations screen that Claire whipped up, and thank you, Claire. I do miss you. I know that, you got your own stuff going on, and For the rest of you, we keep in touch. It's not like we have cut off contact with each other, but Claire is a busy girl, and I respect that. But all that to say that, if it were up to me, she'd be with me right now having this conversation, because I realize this is pretty one-sided. And that's one of the reasons I've been trying to get other folks on this podcast, is so it's not a lot of you hearing me monologue. I don't like to hear that. I don't like to edit that. But here I am, saying it, editing it, because I think this is important. Our standing, I'm repeating myself here, and I apologize, but our standing in solidarity and in respect and dignity, even to those we disagree with, it exposes the blind hatred behind the oppressor's actions to the light of day. It can shock those sitting in silent apathy or ignorance into action. If we show neither fear nor retaliation to these violations, they lose their power to control us, and the world sees who the true monsters are. So what does that mean to my various communities, trans, Christian, otherwise? Stay the course. Don't give in to mass hysteria. And instead, consider standing confidently, publicly, with pride, dignity, and respect we are seldom shown. And to borrow the words of the matriarch Esther, if we perish, we perish. Am I saying to put yourself blindly at risk? No. Per the Apostle Paul's words, we should be as cunning as serpents, but as gentle as doves. Trans folks, if you pass, or if you wish to go by your dead name / identity until danger passes, please do so. There's no judgment here, or I would hope anywhere in the community. Keep yourself and your loved ones safe. If, like myself, you have no hope of passing, nor desire to hide behind dead names, this is a very real alternative to fight, flight, or flee. To stand up and be noticed. To draw the eyes of the world at large to the injustices being done to our community. So in summation, stay the course. Keep living life proudly and confidently in your authentic self, whatever that authentic self is. And I'm talking to everybody here, not just the trans community. And because I realize a large part of my audience is not in the LGBT community at all, which is fine. I love my cishet friends. But there are, obviously the fact that you've put your support behind this channel means that this is an issue that you are at least willing to stay informed about. And possibly that you're willing to do more than that. And certainly, we need our advocates right now. A second Trump presidency is a scary place to be for an American trans person. And I'd like it to be otherwise. But we are where we are, and it is what it is. But we need all the help we can get, is what I'm saying. So for those of you that have stuck around through all of this in support of this channel and others like it, heartfelt thank you. You guys are the reason I'm here. Your support of me has been overwhelming, unexpected. I went into this just thinking it was going to be an outlet and nobody was really going to watch it. And yeah, no, it hasn't gone viral or anything. But people care. People keep watching. People keep commenting. You know who you are. And I do my best to read and respond to every single one. Because you folks have made such a difference in my life. And I know that's going to sound sappy and sentimental, but that's because it is. I love you. And I particularly want to thank those who have been my personal heroes and role models in no particular order. Ajay, Hen, Donna, Claire, Riley, Haley, Wesley, Dara, Ashley, friends and family too numerous to name. You've given me confidence and the poise to stand strong. I'd also like to dedicate this to those who have not been as fortunate as I in having such a support network. I encourage you to reach out, even if it means going outside your physical community, and I welcome you to do so in the comments below. I am actually thinking of starting up a small Discord community, so please let me know if you're interested in that as well. And till next time, stay beautiful.